Hello and welcome to another Training Tuesday with Broadlume. My name's Tyler Cobb, Director of Product, and I'm here to talk to you today about PCI compliance training, what it is, and how you achieve it. So PCI compliance is, there's a couple things to break down here. So PCI is the payment card industry. They're the ones that make the rules. So this is a global forum that's founded by the major credit card companies. So American Express, Discover, JCP, MasterCard, all of them. So they manage the ongoing evolution of the payment card industry, specifically the data security standards. So PCI DSS. And think of this as an industry group setting that they set the security rules of everything related to the payment cards. And they're going to ensure that everyone's handling credit card information in a very safe and sustainable way to protect the end consumers and protect all of us. So they're a great thing, very smart experts, and doing the absolute best they can to ensure that we can prevent bad actors from stealing our card data and doing things that none of us will appreciate. So they're here to ultimately minimize the risk and help keep processing costs low because if there's more breaches, there's more losses associated with payment cards data, then our rates are going to skyrocket as they account for those costs. So, and what's going on right now in the payment card industry? It's a dramatically changing landscape. There's increased data breaches. The bad actors have better access to information now. They have better tools, better equipment and software and capabilities and interconnectivity and learning. And so cyber attacks and data breaches are just absolutely on a rise. There's evolving threats, so hackers are becoming much more sophisticated. They're finding ways to exploit our vulnerabilities, steal data. They're getting smarter with phishing and scams and ransomware, and the internet just continuously propagates more and more of that compounding sophistication in those areas. And so these data breaches can be absolutely devastating, not only for those who are affected, but also for the businesses themselves. Oftentimes, they are truly victims. They're just, providing a service. They're providing, products and services that consumers want. And unfortunately, due to, no real fault of their own, they've just been targeted. And it can affect them financially, reputationally, fines, lawsuits, lost customers. It's a real bad deal. So nobody wants to be in that position. And PCI compliance is really the way that we help ensure that there's reduced chance of that happening. So ultimately, consumers are more and more aware of these data security risks. Everyone I talk to is a lot more tight with where they're handing out their credit card information. That's where you're seeing the rise of tokenized, digital wallets and things that are a little bit that can be more secure in certain ways. And so compliance just builds trust. So ensuring that you're taking this seriously, that you have taken the steps to make sure that you are being a good steward of their credit card data. So just furthermore here, this slide is just showing a graph of just some of these top patterns over time in the retail industry specifically, and these are breaches. This is sourced from the Verizon DBIR, and this report is really interesting. But this particular chart is mind-blowing. So you just see what a huge rampant increase over just the last 6 years has seen in the percent of system intrusions. Social engineering is just absolutely on a rise. And so, which is really scary. Like this, it's not just in one area that hackers are getting better and better at. It's also on the social side, on the system side. So just on all angles, we're getting attacked, and it's just a bad deal. So we got to take our security seriously, and that's a big part of what the PCI compliance is doing. So, and that brings us to a lot of merchants have been vocal about, it seems that PCI compliance is harder than it used to be, or I hear a lot of times that, oh, our previous payment processor didn't make us do this, or our previous software vendor, just handled this for us, or we paid a small fee and it really wasn't a big deal. That's just not really an acceptable answer anymore. And a lot of this is based around back in March 2024, they upgraded the security standards from version 3.2 to version 4.0. And in doing that, there's a much higher responsibility for both the merchants and the third party service providers, and it's a lot more clearly explained what those rules and responsibilities are. And so there's not this great, they got rid of the gray area that where it was like, oh, well, the software vendors can just say, oh, well, it's a merchant's responsibility. If they don't want to do it, that's on them, and they're at risk. So that's not really okay anymore. So for example, here 12.8 clarified the use of a PCI DSS compliant TPSP, that's third party service provider, that's Broadlume, does not make an entity PCI DSS compliant, nor does it remove the entity's responsibility for its own PCI DSS compliance. So essentially, that very clearly states that nothing we do will prevent you, the merchant, from having to prove that you are PCI compliant. So we're all in this together. We're Broadloom here to help with security, and we certainly are doing everything in our power to protect and to provide systems and tools and software that all uh, to the highest levels of security that are available. But ultimately, you're responsible for protecting your customers' data. And while we provide, tokenized software solutions and secure terminals, the at the end of the day, we will never know what a particular company or merchant's processes are on the back end. So it doesn't matter if you have a uh, that if you enter it into a virtual terminal, if and that's all safe and high standards and compliant, but then you take that information, you also email it to your back office person to enter into that virtual terminal. So there's always these things, or maybe you're using another provider outside or another solution for taking card data. There's just things that we can't possibly know. So that's where uh, the merchant is always ultimately responsible for their compliance and using good best practices when handling sensitive card information. So another one that is relevant here that's changed is 11.3. So in the new version 4.0, requires internal vulnerability scans to be performed via authenticated scanning. So while this is a best practice until March 31st, 2025, that's still something that we should all be striving to do. And ultimately, after March 31st, this will become a hard requirement. So, and these scans find hidden vulnerabilities. So these are good things. These it's like think of this as like a required systems health screening. So yeah, once we hit a certain age, we need to go get regular cancer scans and those things. And it's just not smart to not do this. And so we're absolutely supporting this. And everyone absolutely needs to do this if it's relevant for your particular SAQ type. And we'll talk about SAQ types here in a second. So what does the enrollment process looks like? The bulk enrollment of all of our existing merchants began on October 1st, 2024. There's a 90-day grace period, and that is to become compliant before the non-compliance fees are charged. So net new merchants will get that same 90-day grace period, and that begins 1 week from application approval. If at any time you decide, hey, we don't want to do our payment processing here, this an enrollment process is handled by emailing Broadlume at payments@broadlume.com. However, unenrollment with any continued processing will still incur the non-compliance fees because essentially you're processing uh, while non-compliant, so that presents a greater risk to the card brands, to the consumers, and ultimately incurs those fees. How does it work? We partner with Conformance and PCI Toolkit, which is a best-in-class partnership, and this provides end-to-end compliance management. This can be accessed to your assigned portal for 360 degrees visibility, and there's ongoing direct support and monitoring through PCI Toolkit. So what does this compliance workflow look like? First, you'll start with your account activation. And then after that, you will have a welcome email sent. Occurs within the first week, so after activation. And this is coming from do not reply at conformancetech.com. Please do not assume that this is a spam email or anything like this. This is the approved vendor for conformance and PCI compliance. And then that will give you instructions for activation on your welcome email. So that will have some additional follow-up emails as sent as needed. Next, you'll complete your PCI tasks. So completion of your self-assessment questionnaire, or SAQ is commonly known as. And then the network scan, if needed, will also take place. So all of this is done via the PCI Toolkit portal. Then in your 90-day milestone, if your business is compliant, then that is great. If not, then your business will be billed a $54.95 non-compliance fee. And so that'll be deducted monthly around the same date as merchant fees. You will complete an attestation of compliance, AOC, to remain compliant, and that'll be at the 1 year milestone. And the nice thing is that this is good for a year. So as long as you don't have any major changes to your business, you won't have to redo this. So just a recap of the PCI Compliance Explained program enrollment. You are enrolled in the PCI Toolkit upon activation of your payments account, and all existing merchants were enrolled on 10/1. So that helped you understand a little bit more about the workflow of compliance, but let's actually talk about the steps of compliance. The first step is completing your business profile. So this will ensure that your business selects the correct SAQ type or self-assessment questionnaire for its processing method. So you're basically answering a series of questions, maybe like 10 questions or so, and that's going to determine where your company falls in this matrix. And then that triggers a completely different set of questions depending on which SAQ type you are. So then you'll complete the actual SAQ, and we'll ask a series of questions related to your network, processing workflow, security, and it'll confirm that the business is processing and being a good steward of cardholder data. Finally, if a physical processing terminal is being used, then a quarterly network vulnerability scan will also be required. Again, this is just a good health check to make sure that there's no malware or any kind of vulnerabilities on your system, on the same system that the actual device is on. And then you will attest to the results of the compliance questionnaire, and the compliance will be valid for 1 year, and it needs to be renewed annually. So what are the different SAQ types? There's a bunch of different ones here, but primarily most flooring dealers will fall into one of two categories, either the B-IP, so those are typically ones that are using a terminal, or the C-VT, aka C-virtual terminal, are the ones not using a terminal. It is possible that your particular business may fall outside of these two categories. However, if you do, I would recommend reaching out just to verify that maybe you didn't go off the rails a little bit, because some of the other questionnaires are quite intensive. And if it's not applicable to your business, it could be very confusing if you're going down one of those paths and it's not applicable to you. And then the next step is the full SAQ, and that will be a list of informational questions just to ensure that your business is handling card data in a approved way. So think of it as like setting the building code standards for the industry. So some general knowledge here for PCI compliance. The PCI compliance process is standardized throughout the industry. This is not unique to a particular payment processor. It's not unique to Broadlume. This is something that is absolutely standard across the entire industry. Many processors out there just charge merchants a non-compliance fee and don't really offer solutions for you to become compliant other than just assuming that you will take the initiative to do so yourself, because as a merchant that's processing payments, it is your responsibility to do so. So they just kind of take that hands-off approach. But like I mentioned earlier, the new 4.0, I think will put a pretty big stop to that, and you'll see more and more everyone rowing in the same boat of helping people get ensure PCI compliance. And it ultimately it's better for consumers. It's better for everyone that we're just protected more here. So, and unfortunately, it is not the processor's responsibility if when a merchant has a data breach. So a data breach where card data is compromised, it will fall solely on the merchant, which can lead to massive fines, and being non-compliant will not help that situation. The good news is PCI compliance is not a constant thing that you have to deal with. So after the initial process, which we all understand and appreciate is pretty cumbersome, the questionnaire will only be revisited if your credit card processing methods change. So, for example, if you go through and you do the CVT, so the virtual terminal one only, but then later you decide to add a terminal to your system, to your setup, then you'll need to complete that questionnaire and do the vulnerability, the network scan. So hopefully that helped shed some light. There's a couple last things I wanted to talk through. Merchants with multiple locations that all take payments in the same way can be linked together so that one questionnaire basically applies to all locations. And the way this will work is once your initial compliance is completed, the attestation of compliance, or the AOC, will need to basically be manually copied over to each linked MID. So this is done by submitting a support ticket request through your PCI Toolkit dashboard. And in that PCI support ticket, include the DBA name and MID of the accounts that need to be linked. And then as compliance is at the mid level, um, and it varies, depending on how payments are processed, this is a manual step to ensure sign off. Basically, that each MID is processing in the same manner as the AOC that you're looking to link it to. So, and all MIDs need to be compliant for the main account to be considered to be compliant. So this is one way to help shortcut a little bit of the burden if you have a bunch of different locations all doing the same thing. They'll still all each, I assume, have to do the network scan and such, but at least not having to do all the questions over and over again. And finally, if you need help with PCI compliance, but you're not sure where to turn, you can skip the general support line of going to our support team. Instead, head straight to the PCI Toolkit portal. This is a dedicated resource, and it's your one-stop shop for all things PCI related. So they have targeted information, they have expert supports that are very intimate with all of the questionnaires and the different types of businesses and all of that to guide you through the process in a positive and really great way. So submit your requests directly into the portal for a faster, more specialized assistance on all of your PCI needs. That wraps up our Training Tuesday on PCI compliance. I hope we've all learned a little bit more today and have some appreciation for all that the PCI DSS standards do for us. And thank you for listening in today. Have a great week.